Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Samunatira Vanachari Jamunadira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhari Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhari Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jamunadira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Balava Giri Baradhari Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Jasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunadira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Satashi Shima Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Stotara Satashi Shima Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Jagaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shami Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Mukam karoti vachalam pangam langayate girim yatkri patarham bande shigaru dinatarane. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 17th chapter, 19th verse. Kechid Pakalpa Vasana Ahur Admanam Amanaha Divyam Daivam Anye Pare Karma Svabhavan Apare Prabhum Kachid Vikalpa Vasana Vikalpa Vasana Ahuradmanam Admana Daivimanye Para Pare Karma Svabhavan Apare Prabhum Kechit, some of them, Vikalpa Vasanaha, those who deny all kinds of duality. Ahuhu, declare. Admanam, own self. Admanaha, of the self. Daivam, superhuman. Anye, others. Apare, someone else. Karma, activity. Swabhavam, material nature. Apare, many other. Prabhum, authorities. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activity is responsible. And the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Responsibly, some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible. Others say, well, yet others say that activity is responsible. And the gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As referred to above, philosophers like Jaimini and his followers establish that fruitive activities is the root cause of all distress and happiness, and that even if there is a superior authority, some superhuman powers, powerful god or gods, he or they are also under the influence of fruitive activity, because they reward result according to one's action. They say that action is not independent because action is performed by some performer. Therefore, the performer himself is the cause of his own happiness or distress. In the Bhagavad Gita 6.5, also it is confirmed that by one's mind, freed from material affection, one can deliver himself from the sufferings of material pangs. So one should not entangle oneself in matter by the mind's material affections. Thus one's own mind is one's friend or enemy in one's material happiness and distress. Atheistic, materialistic Shankayites conclude that material nature is the cause of all causes. According to them, combinations of material elements are the causes of material happiness and distress. And disintegration of matter is the cause of freedom from all material pangs. Gautama and Kanada find that atomic combination is the cause of everything. And impersonalists like Ostravakra discover that the spiritual effulgence of Brahman is the cause of all causes. But in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord himself declares that he is the source of impersonal Brahman, and therefore he, the personality of God, is the ultimate cause of all causes. It is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita that Lord Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes. Verse, text 19. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activity is responsible. And the gross materialists maintain that nature is the cause, is the ultimate cause. Om Gyanati Manasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Bachalam Pongam Longayate Girim Yat Kripat Taraham Bande Shri Guru Dinatarane. According to this verse, people are constantly bewildered about why they are either in happiness or distress. Some say it's due to their own activity, and others say there's some superhuman powers controlling it, and others just say that it's the activity that yields its own results. Now there's a lot of racial tension in the world, and no one knows the solution. People think that it's caused by themselves, or their superhuman powers may be involved. Some say it's the activities themselves that cause it, but no one seems to really know what causes it. But Prabhupada is saying at the end of his purport here that he, the personality of God, is the ultimate cause of all causes. It is confirmed Brahma Samhita that Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes. In other words, the basic principle that we're not the body is the way to avoid all types of tension and fighting. There's always been a lot of fighting over anything. It can be over race, it can be over economics, it can be over politics, it can be over money. There was a time when there was a lot of tension in India. I was there when Indira Gandhi was assassinated by a Sikh, and in order to retaliate, Hindus against Sikhs, they slaughtered. There was a train going to Amritsar. It's sort of the Sikh headquarters in our temple, main temple in north of New Delhi in India. And these Hindus got on board the train, probably illegally, and slaughtered every single Sikh that had no idea about the assassination. I know about this because I knew one person who was on that train, and it was a lady, and she said that the only reason she was spared was because she didn't have a Sikh silver bracelet that they usually wear, and she showed this to the assassins, and they all had machetes. They were butchering people. They weren't just shooting them. They were very cruelly slaughtering them, cutting their heads off, cutting their arms off. And somehow this whole train full of people, when it arrived in Amritsar, it was full of dead people, hundreds of dead Sikhs. So they were fighting over race, or religion. Sikh religion is one thing, and Hindu religion is another thing. That was the cause of it. Then there was a communal violence in India that took place sometime later. There were the shooters against the Brahmins, or the what Prabhupada calls the vitiated. He uses that word several times. Vitiated, the spoiled caste system, and they were burning buses and killing people. And there's even there was a film called something about Mother India, I think it was the name of it, or something like that. And it was a documentary based on some Hindus that raped a woman on a train, and they said that it was her fault for being alone or something like that. So there's fighting over all kinds of things. It could be race, it could be gender, it could be communal, it could be over economics. They said that the U.S. Civil War was a kind of a race war. They wanted to liberate black people, and Abraham Lincoln was known as the great emancipator. There was a book written, I think it was in about 1905, called The Klansman. And in that story, of course it's just a novel, but the Ku Klux Klan, amazingly enough, were the heroes of that film, of that book. And it was made into a film called Birth of a Nation. So it's not a new thing, racial tension and racial violence. It's just exists everywhere. There was I think this is a true event. There was a black mayor of Atlanta, Georgia. He was a black person, and he was because he was a political dignitary. He was kind of escorted into the temple, and in the temple they had Radha and Krishna, like we have a black Krishna and a white Radha, and they have a similar setup there. And he said, "Well, I always knew God was black, but I didn't know he had a white girlfriend." So there was always this tension between blacks and whites. That he actually said that. There's always something to fight over, whether it's racial, communal, economic, national, or whatever. There's even people who fight over, violently protest the species of, they call it speciesism. There's genderism and there's racism and there's something called speciesism. And there's a group of people I think it's there in Western India, mostly located in Western India, that say that the cows in that part of India aren't real cows. They don't give real milk, and they're not the real genuine article. Like you have to be a zebu, or a white cow with a big hump, in order to be the real thing. So, and they even have billboards over parts of some of the big cities, saying, more or less, carrying their slogan that there aren't real cows. There's several breeds of cows in India. I've been to some of the temples in the southern western part of India, like in Manipur. There's a temple. They have a Rath Yatra every day. It's a pretty nice temple. Every day of the week there's a Rath Yatra. Not a huge car. The huge car is brought out once a week. But anyway, there's a lot of tension in that part of the world. They ride the deities on a little boat, on their pukar, on a little lake outside the temple every day, and they have fireworks in that city. But there's also always a lot of racial tension. They have a different kind of cow in that temple in Manipur. They have a goshala right inside the temple, and they're very much smaller cows than the ones that we see here, the Herefords and the Frisians and the what do they call it? Holsteins. They're smaller. They're usually black in color, and they don't have humps on them. But they're worshipped, and so they're part of the people that on the good side that say that they have real cows, that they're real cows. So whatever it is, there's fighting, and it's kind of nonsensical. There was a story about World War II when the Allies landed on the shores. They got involved in the war, and sometimes they were having to kill people of the same race, even of a very similar mentality, and it's just kind of really ridiculous that they have this kind of slogan, all Black Lives Matter or something like that, and it's all over the world now. It's become tense. I think there was an English historian named Arnold Toynbee. He died in 1975, I think, a few years before Prabhupada died, and Prabhupada and him had a discussion, and he's a very famous world historian, and he said that there would be so much tension between races that the Chinese people and the African people would outnumber the white people at some point, and they would go to war over race, yellow people against black people against white people, and it's just a very strange thing. And I want to read something that actually happened to you in England. There was I know what my life was like in the 1971 and 72. I used to go with devotees. We used to parade up and down Oxford Street 7 days a week doing Harinam. And when the police came by, they had equestrian police that rode on very tall horses. The saddles were over our heads. They were that big, and people were afraid of these policemen because the horses were such large animals, and they walked right on the sidewalk. Anyway, these people called street traders had to pay a fine. It was kind of like a £50 fine every day for selling trinkets on the streets. There were 3 or 4 of them every day out on the street. But they made so much money selling these little earrings and bracelets and necklaces that £50 was nothing to them. It's like it was in those days. It was about the equivalent of $35 or something like that. Or no, I'm sorry. It was £50 was more in dollars. It was about $70, but it didn't matter to them. Anyway, the police sometimes arrested the devotees who were walking on that street. Oxford Street it's like the main artery, main thoroughfare in England, in London. And sometimes we got arrested for obstruction. Even then, we thought it was kind of hypocritical because these street traders were illegally trading right on the street, and their payment of £50 was sort of like a bribe to the British policeman. But it went on anyway. So we thought it was kind of silly. And anyway, there was an incident where we got hauled into what was called Marlborough Court one day. And And the police thought they had to do their duty by arresting us. So I'm going to read something that took place in that court. This is part of a report that was written by a devotee named Sakshi Gopal, and it was read out loud to Prabhupada in Mayapur in 1977. There was a vigil in Vrindavan. And so this is how the report goes. Next morning in the court, we pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against us. This is, our men were doing Nagar Sankirtan. So some constable, police officer, said that you are blocking the footpath with your Naga Sankirtan, and I must arrest you. So they were taken to court. The next morning in court, we pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against us. The judge therefore deferred our case to a later time, the 2nd of February at 2 p.m. It was not until the day before the hearing that we realized the actual significance of the appointment. The 2nd day of February was the appearance day of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. After ending a morning of fasting and chanting with a blissful arati and splendid prasadam, this was read out to Prabhupada, this is the report, we set off for the great Marlborough Street Magistrates Court in a confident mood, sure that Lord Nityananda would protect us. We were accompanied by, a Roman Catholic priest. And I won't read that. So, and the report continues. We arrived at the courthouse and waited in the big hallway while the Reverend, our friend, went through to the public gallery. The plainclothesmen, now dressed in uniform. It took a little persuasion before they cautiously took some of Lord Nityananda's prasadam in the form of cookies while we waited for our case to turn up. The devotees brought prasadam with them to the courtroom and were distributing. A stir went. At last we were beckoned into the courthouse itself and ushered into the dock. A stir went around the assembly in the court. Shaven heads and saffron robes were the last thing anyone expected to see in Her Majesty's court on a Tuesday afternoon. The magistrate, a balding, portly man in his late middle age, a red nose in his dark gray suit, surveyed us over the top of his gold-rimmed spectacles. We affirmed our plea of not guilty to the clerk of the court, and one of the constables who was sworn in at the witness box proceeded to report the supposed conditions of our arrest. The actual number of the chanting Nagar Sankirtan party miraculously grew from the original 5, first of all, to 7 when he started his account, and later to 8 persons when he described how 3 devotees ran off and escaped arrest. According to his description, it seemed that many more people had been using Oxford Street than we had been aware of. Indeed, unlimited numbers of pedestrians had been obstructed and forced into the road at the grave risk of being run over by the almost non-existent traffic. The judge listened impartially, and then, since we had no advocate to speak out on our behalf, he asked us if we would like to cross-examine the evidence of the policeman. When we humbly pointed out that the constable, like everyone else, had imperfect senses, that he had contradicted himself in assessing the actual number of devotees, the judge politely suggested that it was a mathematical error. A titter of laughter rippled around the courtroom at his remark, while the police constable shuffled his feet and looked embarrassed. We were asked if we ourselves would like to speak for our defense. So having been previously chosen as a spokesman, this is Sakshi Gopal, is the name of the guy who wrote this, I volunteered to be sworn in at the witness box. Surprised when the usher asked me to hold a copy of Bhagavad Gita in my right hand, I read out the words of the card presented before me. He didn't swear on the Bible. This is Tamal Krishna now saying aside to Prabhupada. He didn't swear on the Bible, he swore on the Bhagavad Gita. And then Sakshi's report continues. I swear by Almighty Sri Krishna that the evidence I shall give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Encouraged by smiles from the devotees in the dock, I began to describe the circumstances of our arrest, this time as they actually had happened. The magistrate listened as I went on to say, we understand that the police have a duty to perform, sir, but we also have a duty. We have been instructed by our spiritual master. Indeed, we are instructed by all principal scriptures of the world, the Quran, the Torah, the Bible, and the Vedas, that we should glorify God by chanting His holy names. Whether you know God by the Lord, by the name of Allah, Jehovah, Rama, Govinda, or Krishna, God is one. Oh, quite so, affirmed the magistrate. Encouraged, I went on. It is said in the Vedic scriptures, in the Brihat Naradiya Purana, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam. In English, then the magistrate intervened. In English, what does that mean? Kalo nasteva, eva nasteva, eva nasteva, ever ganyata. It is written in the Sanskrit language 5,000 years ago. It means, in the age of Kali, the present age of materialism and quarrel, there is no alternative. No, there is no alternative. There is no alternative for making positive spiritual advancement but the chanting of the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. The judge, in fact, the whole courtroom sat there fascinated. I remembered, this actually happened, Srila Prabhupada's introduction. And then there's Prabhupada and Tamal Krishna have a little side conversation, and the report goes on. He read, although mankind has made great material advancements in so many spheres, we can actually say that there is a fault in the social body at large. People are not happy with their day-to-day activities, and there is an increasing disturbance of drug addiction, prostitution, violence, and crime. The root of the problem is the lack of God consciousness. People are unaware of the actual purpose of life. The judge, intrigued by this sound philosophy coming from the witness box, relaxed his judicial appearance, sat back, and took a sip of water from his glass. Encouraged, I asked, Your Honor, in England they call him Your Worship. I don't know, this is what he wrote though. Your Honor, with the permission, I would like to read a short passage which appeared in the London Observer in October 1972. It is an excerpt from an article written by the eminent English historian Sir Arnold Toynbee. And I had read and noted this report because even before this arrest took place, it was a very insightful, and that was part of the reason that Prabhupada was interviewing him, because he gave a very interesting report, and it was published in a newspaper in England. The cause of it, the world's malady, he wrote, the cause of it, the world's malady, is spiritual. We are suffering from having sold our souls to the pursuit of an objective which is both spiritually wrong and practically unattainable. We have to reconsider our objective and change it. And until we do this, we shall not have peace, either amongst ourselves or within each of us. Then the devotee continued. This is Tamal Krishna reading the report again. As devotees of the Lord, we strictly follow four principles, cultivating the qualities of human life, mercifulness, truthfulness, cleanliness, and austerity. The absence of these qualities means the degradation of society. So the spreading of spiritual understanding amongst humanity at large is the highest welfare work, and an essential part of the program is the distribution of literature and the congregational chanting in the streets of the holy names of God. Is that all? Inquired the judge. Yes, sir, was the reply. Then you may step down, he instructed. Adjusting his spectacles and regarding the devotees who were once more assembled in the dock, he said in a very firm yet amicable manner, in legal terms, you are guilty of obstruction, although it is of a very minor degree. Taking this into consideration, and because of your obvious sincerity, I have decided to dismiss the case. We smiled jubilantly, and, thanking the magistrate, were about to step down when Krishna prompted me to say, Sir, we were wondering if you had a court library here, in which case we would like to present a book for addition to the collection. Thank you, replied the judge. I am quite sure we can accommodate it. Giving a copy of Srila Prabhupada's Sri Ishopanishad to one of the clerks, who promised to pass it on to the judge, we left the courtroom, thanking Lord Nityananda for his mercy. Jai Srila Prabhupada. This really happened. I attended this court on some other incidents. Most of the time our cases were dismissed, but there were all kinds of strange cases. People who were in their 50s who did some shoplifting, and it was a very sort of boring day when I went to the Marlborough court. But this was a kind of an interesting day when the devotees went there. So the idea is that people can fight and make judgments over anything, but unless they get the real philosophy of Krishna consciousness, they fail to stop the violence that goes on. And Prabhupada is very, very dismissive of the United Nations. They call it United Nations, and in Europe they call them unity within diversity, the independent states of the European community. But Prabhupada was very dismissive of the United Nations, saying that they call it united, but these aren't his exact words, but there's more and more flags every year So they're arguing and fighting over national boundaries, even though they're calling it United Nations. And when they even have their own army, and when parts of the world are engaged in racial discrimination, they summon their tanks. They have United Nations written on them. It's very strange. So anyway, it's a bit compromising that we read Srimad Bhagavatam every day, but we're doing it because Prabhupada ordered it. And even though he didn't coin the phrase "purity is the force," he's on record of saying over 2,500 times, pure Krishna consciousness. That phrase, pure Krishna pure devotional service. That's the exact phrase, pure devotional service. So, and it's quite apparent that Prabhupada was very uncompromising, even up till the end of his days on the earth. Very uncompromising about people living in the bodily concept, and that this is the root of all evil, of all warfare, of all tension, thinking that we're the body and not something else, something of the soul. And it's interesting that he was giving a talk at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. MIT is considered one of the leading institutions of higher learning in the world, on a par with Harvard and Oxford. Now it's technology that matters. And when I was a student at Reed College, it was considered a very liberal college, but their science arm, all the time I was there, got bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's pretty much, I mean, I haven't been there for a long time, but it's become a technical institute. And it's the same all in universities all over the world. The technology is becoming the rule. It's not real philosophy or liberal arts. It's learning how to measure and quantify things. That's what technology is doing. It's ruining people's thinking capacity. So I'll read the verse again. Some of the philosophers who deny all sorts of duality declare that one's own self is responsible for his personal happiness and distress. Others say that superhuman powers are responsible, while yet others say that activity is responsible. And gross materialists maintain that nature is the ultimate cause. So no one really knows what the ultimate cause is of disasters and and tension that exists between people, but Krishna consciousness does have a very simple answer, that we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're not the community, we're not the family, we're something else, something different. That is what Prabhupada said is the basic, back to the basics philosophy. So any comments or questions on this, or anything I've said or read? If you're far away, you can't ask the question. Oh, here's a question. One. Hare Krishna.
I just have a question regarding, we understand that Krishna is the cause for everything. And in the material world, things happen due to our past karma. Yet it seems non-devotees or materialists don't want to accept responsibility for things. People will say, I don't believe in God that will cause death to babies or any other bad thing that's going on. So how does everybody preach to people saying these times where of this racial discrimination, you can't turn around and say, that's your fault because you did something bad in your past life, so therefore you have to suffer this problem that you're going through. So how do devotees preach to people to get them to understand that we are responsible for things that go on in communities in the world?
Well, we are ultimately always responsible, as the courts say, or they put people in jail because they say that, I mean, someone can say, well, Jesus made me do it, or God made me do it, or it wasn't me, it was the gun that's responsible. Those people do make those kinds of pleas of innocence. Or I was insane. Or the lawyers say that he was insane. He was mad when he committed this murder. But judges kind of see through that. And the way that I would preach to people that there's a solution to racial tension is to understand that we're not black, we're not white, we're not male, we're not female, we're not Americans, we're not Indians or Canadians or anything like that. Or there's all kinds of colors of people's skin. I mean, one of the rock stars, a black rock star, tried to make his skin white because he thought that was the way to be, and that is pretty gross. But the basic philosophy that we're not the body is the real solution. That I can't judge a person because of his skin color or her skin color, the first and foremost basic part of the Krishna conscious devotional service philosophy is that I'm not the body. And if I'm not the body, I can't say that I have to be given certain rights because I have a certain color of skin. So that's how I would preach to those people. I'd say that the real solution to the racial problem is the fact that we're thinking we're these bodies, or we're thinking I'm black, I'm white, I'm yellow, I'm whatever. There's so many shades. There's Indonesians. There used to be like 3 races: the yellow race, and the black race, and the white race. And now there's so many shades in between. Not just because of intermarriages, but because there's so many. Like the world has become a sort of like a global village. I mean, there's Indonesians, there's people that are... And I think it was Billy Graham that once said that even Christ himself wasn't white. He was born in that part of the world where people are kind of dark, the Middle East. And so that he said that even though a lot of artists portray him as being a very pure white individual, he wasn't actually that way because he was born in the Middle East. I mean, that's what he said anyway. I don't know if that's true. And we don't, all of us that are sitting here or listening to this are not all of us, but many of us or in this room are looking at Prabhupada as what he said, not his skin color. He was a little brown or something like that. It was the message of what he was saying that was important to us. And the main message was that we're not the body. It's a struggle. I mean, because people really think that they are the bodies. So there's a big struggle. There's this court case, and there was a lot of. There's a big struggle to even in India when the Krishna Balaram temple opened. A lot of local people thought that you have white people being pujaris and women being pujaris, and this is against the traditions of this country. And there's a lot of people still in that part of the world that look down upon the white people, thinking that they're not the genuine article because they're not Brahmin, they're not born Brahmins. Anyway, I don't know if that answers.
So in regards to preaching, you would emphasise just not being on the bodily concept as opposed to the karmic reactions of how we got to being on the bodily concept.
Yeah.
Is that something right?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you.
So anything else?
I think we all have to be quite grateful to the pioneering devotees for all cases that were exciting to hear, and there were so many others like I said, and now we can all freely go about chanting and doing our businesses in devotional attire, and we don't get harassed anymore like we used to by the police.
In most countries.
Yeah, with...
Don't try it in Qatar. Or UAE.
In Western countries, we're well received, and I think we have to remember that the groundwork was done by the pioneering devotees in Australia and other places that got locked up and had to come up in court and so on and so forth.
Well, we can look at history and say that because we were fighters and because we were right and we prevailed, that we made it possible to be more accepted. And I think that was the struggle actually began way years back in the middle of the 19th century when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was people in India generally thought that people who chanted Hare Krishna were sentimentalists. And most of the people in that part of the world they're spiritual, which is a good thing, but they're also impersonal, which is not a good thing. And Prabhupada had to fight that his whole life, as did his spiritual master. And so it wasn't that the devotees weren't just not taking no for an answer. We were following in the footsteps of great souls who fought for their right to exist and do what they had to do. And when there was a court judgment that was read out to Prabhupada in 1977 by a very highly placed judge in America called Judge Leahy. I don't know how you pronounce his name, Lehi or Lee or whatever. And he said that the Hare Krishna is a bona fide religion with roots going back to India, dating thousands of years. And Prabhupada really liked that judgment, and he said, now my mission is successful. It was in 1977, after he had almost 10 years ago had started the Krishna consciousness movement, 10 years before. But it was a struggle all the way, and this court judgment was the turning point of this movement against the Krishna consciousness in the United States, Krishna consciousness movement. It was a turning point because this was a very highly placed judge, and it took the wind out of the sails of a lot of the anti-cult people. I mean, it's a very, very good judgment, and you can read about it in Yogeshwar's book. He's got the whole judgment is there. It's called Swami in a Strange Land. And at the end of it, Prabhupada says, now my movement is successful. And he most of his life, he wanted the judges and people who were highly intelligent people to read the philosophy in his books. And this person had obviously read something about it, but he had a sense, the higher sense that the Krishna consciousness was bona fide. It wasn't just a cult. It wasn't something that people invented because they liked Prabhupada or they had some kind of sentimental attachment, but it was the real genuine article. And Prabhupada was sometimes written about in Newsweek magazine as the fighting guru. There was a picture of him pointing his index finger, like there was a picture of a caricature of the president, Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam wants you, and this was the picture. It was a guy wearing a red and white and blue hat, and Uncle Sam wants you. And there was a picture of Prabhupada with making that same gesture, and it went on to say that he would fight opposition all the way. And so many people of that part of the world think that they have to be passive resistors. Prabhupada was very dismissive, although he was in his younger life, he was very much of a follower of Gandhi, but he was very dismissive of him in his old age. And he said that the British they pat him, they liked him, they thought they could live with passive resistance or non-cooperation. But when Subhash Chandra Bose, this is a bit of history, made the Indian National Army, then that's when the British knew that it was over, that they were going to fight. And they didn't want that. Anyway, there's a bit more history to it than that, but that's the basics. Anything else? Okay, I think we'll stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Hare Bol.